Welcome to the Shopify App Show, where we shine a light on the most innovative apps pushing the boundaries of Shopify and the people behind them. Every show, we talk to indie app developers who are setting the trends for the future. Their innovation helps stores all over the world to sell more, operate more efficiently, and create great experiences for their customers. Today's guest ticks all of those boxes and then some. Kiril Climson is the co-founder and lead engineer at Order Editing. The name Order Editing sums up what it does perfectly, or at least it used to, until they expanded their offering to the entire checkout journey and post-order journey on Shopify stores. Kiril's co-founder Hamish has been the very active face of Order Editing, building it in public. But when I met him both in Toronto last year, it was clear Kiril is a lot more than just a coder behind the scenes. He's a captivating guy in his own right. Every time I saw him, he was being bailed up by multiple people, and his colourful fashion didn't exactly let him hide in the background. This is not a product demo show. We're not being paid by our guests, but I'm always open to sponsors if you want to sponsor us. I started this show because I've always been in awe of the innovation of independent app developers. They build amazing things every day. And while Shopify might have the budget to build flashy landing pages and drop their 100 product announcements every 6 months, the real innovation happens in the app ecosystem. It's something unique and special, and there's so many wonderful people for us to talk to. If you've got an app that you'd like me to feature, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. This also wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't tell you to like, share, subscribe, and tell your grumpy neighbour next door about us. We're going to talk a little bit about the Order Editing story and the app itself, but also look forward to hearing Kiril's insights into the broader app ecosystem and other things happening on Shopify. This is going to be fun, so let's get started. All right, Kiril, welcome to the Shopify App Show. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm excited to be here. First podcast ever. I'm excited.
Wonderful. And I was very excited when I reached out to you and Hamish put you forward. I'm like, I actually would probably almost prefer to have Kiril on. I met you over in Canada last week, and as Hamish said himself, we've all heard a lot of Hamish over the years. So I'm very excited to have you on and hear some of the behind the scenes stories from Order Editing and your journey over the last couple of years. I'd love to maybe just kick off. I feel like I know Order Editing very well and have been very across what you've done from growing from a two-man team to where you are today. But I'd love to maybe just hear your story, just back to where it started. Yeah, how you came to team up with a bloke on the other side of the world and create what now has become a really interesting app with a huge suite of product offerings.
Yeah, it's really been honestly just a blessing to meet Hamish in the first place, because it's kind of only in our generation that it's like online culture. Where like before Order Editing, I was running my own little Shopify business back in Toronto. And I have a funny upbringing. Basically, after high school, had absolutely no money to my account. Parents had no money either. And so I was originally going to go to like Waterloo for mathematics, but I just had like no money and I had like no desire to just get into loans and do all that. So I got a graphic design job. And then for like a very, very long time, I just worked as a graphic designer in downtown Toronto. And then this was about the time where like, as someone who lives in Toronto, you got to also see like how Shopify was becoming part of the culture in Toronto. And then I saw like that a lot of people were opening up these like drop shipping stores for like, oh, you can drop ship t-shirts, you can drop ship mugs. Here's a company that'll drop ship mugs and t-shirts for you. And I pretty much decided to do the exact same type of business model, but I called up a bunch of little cosmetic labs across Toronto and I was like, hey, I'm going to build a Shopify app that lets anyone dropship cosmetics. And you're just going to sell me those products and I'll just print on them, like whatever. And that kind of blew up on Shopify for like a couple of years. And I really got to know the nitty gritty about how do you actually build a Shopify app store? What's the culture of Shopify like? What do they like and don't like about apps? And like, you get to learn a lot about like commerce culture. And then 3-4 years in, I had on my like Discord, a little status indicator that said, I'm building Shopify apps. And then one of my friends who was a graphic designer was working for Mr. Beast. And he was managing their like merchandise. And he was like, well, this guy looks like he's building Shopify apps. And we have a lot of problems on Shopify. Hamish, you should just work with them to build a Shopify app to help reduce all of your problems. Then me and Hamish, we got into a little Discord channel. We were like, hey. I was like, do you have free time? I have free time. We built a Shopify app. And then it just became a no-brainer to build it into like a full-fledged business after building like a little MVP for Mr. Beast.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, and the app itself, well, the title, the title sums up exactly what it does, doesn't it? It's a pretty
Order
simple
editing.
concept, and you just picked that name and nailed it, and yeah, then put it out into the wild, and it's grown now into so much more than that, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's also funny to see the evolution of it because we're kind of growing at the same pace as Shopify grows their tech stack. Like when we first launched, it was a website that you visit and you had to put in like your email and confirmation number. And then we could kind of decide how to edit your order. And back then there weren't like a lot of things you could do with an order. Like it was very difficult to like, you know, recalculate taxes. Like you didn't have the APIs for it. So you could like kind of increase quantity, kind of figure out how to send an invoice to a customer. And that's about it. Like that's all you could do. It was so bad back then. I remember having like these ideas of like, okay, so we don't even know how to get the invoice to the customer. What if we build a tool that like reads the emails from the store and like scrapes out the invoice URL and then we send that to the customer? Because there was like nothing at the time for you to do it with native GraphQL APIs. And then Shopify customer accounts rolled out. Shopify checkout extensions rolled out. Shopify removed the script editor and just said, hey, you can build directly on checkout. And it's like, oh, every 8 months we're now rebuilding the app because like there's so much more things that you can do. And it's kind of by like Shopify's grace that kind of like you release an API, you build a feature on that API, 400, 600 tickets for merchants get eliminated. Rinse and repeat, right? It's that Shopify ecosystem type of loop, like cycle, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and so you've now moved beyond just doing order editing, which speaks for itself. But then last year you started to roll out and grow the feature set to doing things like checkout upsells and yeah, self-service customer service that happens before the customers actually placed the order. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you made the decision to start rolling these extra things into the app, and getting away from, I guess, that original functionality of what you created.
Yeah, so like the core is always order editing. And we're kind of lucky because we have a good domain name, right? Orderediting.com. As long as you're editing orders, you're kind of like in the business, right? It's a cycle of like, I used to do onboardings with Hamish, and it was sometimes just, you go through the onboardings and you finish a call and you have like 50 ideas in your head of like, this felt too painful. This felt embarrassing. And like this page of the app didn't even open. And then you go back and you fix it. And then you do the next onboarding call. And if you do like 500 onboarding calls, by the end of it, you kind of feel like, okay, like a lot of merchants, they have the same problem of editing their orders at checkout because they might just want to switch a variant. And people ask you these questions. And so naturally, you kind of just build that feature. As like Hamish introduces me to like a new Slack channel, we have a new Slack channel with the brand, and then the brand's like, well, this app isn't working very well for us. Then we're stepping in and saying, perhaps we could do it better. And so most of the things that we're trying to build is just listening to like the plus customers that we directly work for to be like, our app should be easy to install, easy to use. You should have no motivation to check it every day because it's just working. And if you're complaining about something in the market that's missing, you know, it's our opportunity to build it.
For sure. So I love that mentality, and I see like from early days, like that's something where like you've got that energy, obviously, plus also a smaller customer base. So if someone says, "Hey, can you build this?" You're like, "Great, we can do that," and you can surprise and delight essentially by actually building stuff really quickly. How have you managed to now scale that to actually continue doing that and building upon that when yeah you've now got hundreds or thousands of customers you're dealing with every day, and that they still will suggest stuff that wow, that's a good idea and something we'd like to add in. How are you now managing that at scale?
It's interesting because like as like an engineer, I still come with this like super optimistic, personality and view of the world that if someone says, "Can you build it?" My first instinct reaction is yes, and probably today's afternoon. Like that's just like the instinct reaction of most engineers. Like, of course it's possible. This was possible a week ago. I'm embarrassed I didn't even build it now. But as you scale, you can't really throw something into production anymore. It's irresponsible. You can't really throw something into the world without testing it. It's irresponsible. And like these responsibilities of growing an app means that you just can't build as quickly. You can innovate in theory, but you can't release it to the world. And like a big part of this business was that Paul joined us from Shopify. He worked in APAC as well. And Paul brought in like a lot of like senior expertise, a lot of senior product management, and just the perspective of how do you run a product with like maturity. And so if we see that a lot of customers are telling us, hey, like we're validating addresses at checkout and it's wrong, or we're paying like 10 times, or, somebody changed their address post checkout and they changed it to like a house that doesn't even exist. How is that possible? Paul comes in with this mindset to say, let's scope out the project. Let's talk to a few customers. Let's build a huge Google Doc sheet that tells every single problem and every single test case that has to be solved. And even though like the project isn't going to get like solved in a day, it'll be solved in 3 weeks. It's solved really well, because someone's coming in and asking every difficult question and knowing how Shopify operates as well, right? Because kind of have to know, you have to kind of have someone that comes from the Shopify world and talk to these Plus customers as well to know what is going to be something that they like, or what is something that is not going to be working in accordance to like Shopify's like culture, or Shopify's culture, like being build products that are very, very fast, build products that are very, very secure, build products in a way that runs on Shopify extensions and not third-party websites. And yeah, just when the larger team kind of contributes to build a better product, even a better feature, it's kind of easier to manage these hot, in-demand ideas that come in through Slack.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I've seen, not just from order editing, but like the beauty of the platform now too, is you can actually test a lot of this stuff using things like AI, Sidekick, and Shopify Flow and stuff to sort of, I guess, actually build it out in a way where you do it once and then determine if it's actually going to be a good fit as a proper fully fledged feature in the app. That's something I've seen early days. You were doing quite a bit of that, where Shopify Flow was key to, helping people build out these custom workflows for order editing and talking to ERPs and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I can imagine that's still a big part of how you onboard people and provide good customer support and set up these features without having to actually go and roll out new deployments every time you launch for a new customer.
100%. Because like every time a new app comes onto the ecosystem, they might just be like, we're an app that works with tags. If you tag the order this, we won't work. Like a recent one that I saw on Friday was like TrueMed is a new app that's, as I believe, like Americans pay with an HFSA card. Cool. But those orders just can't be edited for the first 5 minutes. And so then someone will go in and say, hey, we'll just build a flow that says order created. If is it tag this, put a delay of 5 minutes before order editing can start. And boom, you have like a feature built in 2 seconds. Then you kind of monitor it, right? You kind of come back to it in 3 weeks and be like, did it cause any other issues? No. Then we can roll it to be like a native part of the app where we control the experience instead of having to set up a flow for every single customer who might ever use that feature in the future. Flow is like a powerhouse, still is, especially with their new like AI creation tools. You just say what you want and you get it. It's crazy.
Yeah. No. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's I find now that like the integrations page on any app's website is almost becoming irrelevant. It's more just a case of looking at, do these two apps have flow connectors? And if so, you generally know that you can do what you need to. But it's interesting the point you make there, that there comes a point where I guess in scaling your app, so you're saying that integrations are actually really important because it means you can set up the integration in the way that people most commonly need it really quickly and let people self-service with it.
Correct. And like flow is still good because it's lets you like MVP. And an MVP is always very powerful. But as soon as you hit scale, you have to assume that like if flow doesn't work, will my app continue to work? If someone deletes the flow, will my app continue to work? And like those two questions happen a little bit too often in my line of business, right? People delete a
Mm.
flow and then go back to me saying, why isn't this app working? I was like, oh, well, a flow got turned
Yeah.
off. It's like, okay, now we
Yeah.
need an internal
That's
integration.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's one of the big downfalls of Flow still. Like I'm a massive fan of Flow, but it's still hard to do things like it doesn't doesn't store your flows in a repo or track edits or anything like that, does it? So it's
Right.
it's something that as they build that out, it might become even more useful for apps to actually roll out features in it. But yeah, I see exactly where you're coming from there.
Yeah, you always have to be defensive. It's something I learned as well in building the app that you even have to track like who made the change inside of the app. Like
Yeah, yeah,
someone made the change, you store it in the log just so you know that okay, this IP address turned off this feature, and you know it's not one
yeah.
of your team
It's
members, just so that you know.
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty of because it's easy for someone to say in a support ticket that you broke the app, but yeah, you don't want. It's nice to have something to stand back on when you know that when they say that that's not actually what happened. So, um, and so as you've grown the team, so you've now got is it two? You've got two engineers now working for you.
Yeah, so I had one engineer start last year, Andre, and then we just onboarded two engineers last Monday. So now it's a team of four engineers plus Paul, who we're teaching how
Yeah,
to vibe
fantastic. Yeah, and you're all working in totally remote locations to each other.
totally different places. One's Mexico, I'm Toronto, Alan is Queenstown, New Zealand, just off of it. And then Andre likes to travel the world, so he might be in Romania, he might be in Japan. He's all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how are you managing that now going from, being able to build everything yourself to now, having multiple people? I can imagine you've got multiple streams of work happening at any given time. How do you manage the quality and ensure that you're getting the most out of that team?
Getting the most out of the team is the hardest part. It's partially why, like, as a CTO, I will usually just work weekends so I can make sure that people are starting the week without having to wait, and kind of, don't have to play the guessing game of, is this correct? Or did I do this right? Or how do I set up an environment? Like, I usually play that catch up game all the time behind the scenes so that people can just work on what they love and they don't have to have like the human part of the business slow them down. Um, but it's honestly quite nice. If you trust engineers that are smart and high agency, you don't really have to worry about if they're doing work. You just know that they're doing the work they are going to be responsible for. And so I don't really have these like worries that, oh, we're not working enough or I have to control people's MacBooks to see how many times they've clicked on a button. It's really just like you're onboarding really smart people. We have a bunch of products that we have to build and they get effectively built because we just bring on very, very smart people. And
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
joy of
Cool.
this.
Yeah, great. And like, so I know last week you announced a really, quite a significant new feature to the app. You brought in address validation as a completely new product offering within order editing. So, yeah, how did you? Firstly, maybe tell us a little bit about that feature, and I'd love to maybe just hear how you came about rolling out something so significant into the app over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so that was a really, really fun feature to build. And I didn't take any part of it, which is kind of a joy in itself, right? So that was mostly led by Andre and it was mostly led by Paul. Started a couple months ago, and we were trying to solve the issue of, well, there's a lot of old legacy apps that do address validation, but from the market research that we've done, pricing is not very aligned towards what it costs to date to do it versus what it cost 4 years to do it. And it doesn't grow at scale. One of the big problems that we were trying to solve is that if you're a very big store and you do a lot of address validations, you might need to pay for address validations for a dense city in New York City. Because just most likely there's going to be errors there just based on the complexity of apartments, complexity of deliveries. But if someone's ordering it to a countryside in Australia, maybe it doesn't require an address delivery validation that the address actually exists and can accept delivery in packages. And so we started just building this idea about how do we build address validation where it actually goes down in price the longer we have the product in the market, because we get smarter about where do we actually need to validate addresses. And there's you know, when you work with a lot of vendors in order to buy the data, in order to figure out like, where do all these people live? Because you actually need the house numbers, right? And then you start doing all this research about like on Google Maps, the data is actually kind of crowdsourced. It's not always, you know, address validated delivery addresses. It's kind of just like some things are made up, some things don't exist, some things will exist in the future. And it's kind of, we're only here to help you out with an auto completion, but we're not help you to definitively say, yes, this address 100% exists and it will not cause you issues in the future. And as we saw that, there's a lot of room to innovate in the market, we innovated. And Andre and Paul led that spearhead feature so that on checkout, there's address validation. If you don't want to pay for every single address to get validated, it's fine. Bring address validation on the thank you page and maybe only validate B2B orders, high risk orders, orders that live in a dense populated area that's going to have trouble. And, hook up a Klaviyo integration, send those customers an email saying that their address is probably wrong, let order editing handle the change automatically. And you're just going to have less returns, happier customers, and maybe even better reviews because products arrive faster. But it's like one of these projects, again, where you're starting, it's as if you're starting a brand new app from scratch. You have the ways to call Shopify. You have an existing customer base, which gives you a leg up, but you have to figure out the vendors. How does the data flow? How is the data going to be secure? How do you make sure that you're not even like storing the data in a database so that you don't have any liability to begin with if you're collecting everyone's address information and then storing it somewhere? Well, the trick is not to store it to begin with. And so going through the whole process of how do you build a really good Shopify app from scratch is a long and tedious process. But you build it, you get it done, and you get to move on to the next project. That's really, really fun.
Yeah, it's interesting you say it's like building a Shopify app from scratch or a feature from scratch is tedious, but I can imagine you've got some really good guidelines and frameworks in place for deciding how you build stuff. Yeah, I think you've probably come in at a good time in the Shopify ecosystem in some ways, in that you don't have to build so much hacky stuff that a lot of the probably people building apps 10 years ago were having to build stuff that was really hacky because the APIs and the functionality on the platform didn't actually exist. And yeah, even you look at apps that had to build their own custom checkouts for subscriptions because you couldn't do subscriptions on the checkout and stuff like that. So you've come in at a good time in that regard, I think. And as you say, the platform's grown with you there. But what are the are there some foundational principles that you rely upon whenever you're setting something up to make sure that you're not building things that are going to cause problems and become bloated down the line?
I think it's the answer of scoping. I think scoping work is very important. You want to be able to, in one document, define really how like a user journey is supposed to look like from the start to the finish. Just because if you know the entire journey, you're not going to end the project where you're 80% in, and now you have to like start improvising from scratch about how you want to do the last 20%. And that's kind of where like a lot of time gets wasted as well, right? Because now you don't really know how you want to sell it. You don't know how much you're going to charge. You don't know if you're even what your margin or pricing opportunity is anymore. And you're kind of lost and you kind of lose that momentum. If you do it early, it's kind of easier to finish the project. And like from developer to developer, having like the TypeScript definitions mapped out way in advance, having your database schema and like the calls that you're going to be making mapped out way in advance is just kind of easier to build when you kind of build from the idea of we're going to build a framework in order how is this going to be possible from the API level, and then you slowly distill it down towards like the first onboarding button that someone presses. And how do you make that experience just beautiful, simple, and the way I really like to build apps in a way that nobody has to open the dashboard every single day to check if it's still working. Just problem free the minute you start.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the dashboard piece actually was something I wanted to touch on as well because like I think one thing that the order editing story has done really well is telling those simple metrics. Hey, this business saved 400 hours of processing support tickets or made an extra $4,000 this week through upsells or whatever it might be. And apps can often, I've seen a lot of apps where I'm like, those metrics and the numbers that they're showing in their dashboard are just absolute bullshit. Like, I've seen like search providers, for example, where they say they're generating more revenue for the store than the store's actually even got coming through in revenue and stuff like that. And so,
That's a
but
funny
you
one.
seem to have, I think that it's a massive part of integrity of an app is that the metrics are actually real and doing what they say they're going to do, and yeah, clear and easy to understand. Yeah, how much work goes into sort of building out that part of your platform and making sure that you've got that set up so that yeah, you're showing real numbers to people that they can understand and digest, and then also optimize based on those numbers.
Martin, you'd have to bring me onto a 6-hour podcast. This was a big problem in about October because the way the entire app was initially designed was that every time you make an edit, we add meta fields to the order or we tag it. And then we basically, looking at an order, can estimate, okay, it went through a quantity change and a shipping address change. Like we can kind of see it from afar. And that was a good idea, right? We have some source of truth on the order. Then you say, great, we're going to bring on a big plus client and they have 1,000 orders per second. That idea still kind of works. You can still kind of tag orders, though some might get missed. But then you're now going to be trying to like reconcile 100,000 orders to figure out how many quantity edits happened. And that's where the bottleneck starts to occur because you can't do it. You cannot really do it that well. The next iteration was that we were starting to use like the bulk operation API from Shopify because it was unthrottled. So we could pretty much load all the orders in kind of into memory from like the last 3 days and then just process them and just create like a materialized view to say that, okay, we went through the last 10,000 orders, 500 of them had the order editing tag quantity, plus they had more than 2 transactions. It's hinting that there's an upsell. Then let's check in each individual one if there's like the transaction actually occurred and it came from order editing, and we can attribute that revenue to us. And that kind of worked for time period as well. But then you can't really do analytics based on minutes to minutes or hours to hours. You're kind of left with this problem where you have to actually process 10,000 orders in order to determine how many quantity edits did I do. And so in November, I threw out the entire system for analytics because it just took too long. And we onboarded everything onto Shopify's Pixel system, which was really cool because now instead of like trying to look at orders and trying to reconcile, we can kind of get hints ahead of time from Shopify's like, any app can create a pixel, emit a custom event, and send it to myself, and I can process it later. And then in addition, we use like a ClickHouse and Tinybird as databases, which are real good databases for like analytical processing. Like we can process 1 million orders in a second and tell you how many edits happened. But we're no longer like looking at the actual orders, but we're looking at like, okay, look, a user clicked on this order to do a quantity edit. Boom, that's going to count towards like a quantity edit per se. We can deduplicate it, we can reconcile it, we can move the data back to the Shopify order so that the Shopify order remains the source of truth. And now we can actually like handle much larger like queries into Shopify analytics. But traditionally, this is like a very hard space because it's very difficult to query Shopify orders directly. Like only recently did they bring out the Shopify QL API access. You get throttled very quickly if it's not a plus store. So you have to be careful like how much you tag, or if you're even adding a meta field, you have to do that behind the scenes so that you're never like, putting too much back pressure on a Shopify storefront. But yeah, like sometimes I can't even blame other apps if their analytics are inflated because doing it right is very hard. Doing it right requires months of work to consider, even from our side, if an order gets canceled, we should be removing that revenue from attribution. But a lot of upsell apps, they don't do it, right? If an order is canceled, they'll keep the revenue on there. And as an engineer, to build this entire data pipeline that works and is still simple code, it's not easy. So I 100% like sympathize like with other apps that are just trying to get to that point because it took me
Yeah.
months.
Yeah, and I know, and I was pretty flippant before, but you're completely right. It's pretty hard when you've got 100 features you want to roll out to prioritize a feature to make your analytics look worse.
Yeah, I
Get
know.
why I get why it happens, and but yeah, it just shows like I think the importance of that though, like proper sized retailers you're working with, where it's not going to cut it to say, hey, oh yeah, that number's just a little bit inflated because the APIs aren't fast enough. So it's interesting that you talk about using the external database because I feel like you probably also, if you're anything like me, you want to store everything in Shopify and use things like meta fields and meta objects. But at times you just have to use that external data source and bring that layer in. And it sounds like you're sort of using that as a last resort and minimizing how much you use that, so that you're not creating, you're using both systems the way that they should be used.
Because you got to remember as well, like on checkout, the order doesn't exist yet, right? So like if you wanted to track upsell views on checkout, you can kind of add a meta field on the cart. And if the cart gets transformed into an order, the meta field will be there. But what if the order doesn't go through and you still want to know, like, hey, there was a session that looked at this upsell. The only way to do it is to kind of have a database externally that says session ID, upsell viewed, and the upsell view strategy that got viewed, even if it didn't get converted into like an actual order. That way you can report back if you're trying to do split testing that, hey, like this got viewed 1,000 times, this got viewed 500 times, and it's outperforming the other one, even if it didn't get converted into orders, right? So it's like a game of like, I'm gonna put my data on Shopify, I'm gonna have a little bit of data outside of Shopify, and I can come up with a view number and be proud behind it. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'd love to pivot a little bit now and talk about, I guess, yeah, the broader Shopify ecosystem. Yeah, there's so many new features get rolled out yeah, they do the additions announcements every 6 months, but yeah, there's lots of APIs and functionality that I'm sure you'd like to tap into, but haven't done so yet. Yeah, what are you seeing as being the key things to be focusing on over the next 6 months?
Like what do you mean, like APIs that they're putting out?
Yeah, I guess like obviously there's all the UCP stuff that got announced the other week, and so that's a whole minefield and can of worms in its own right. But then there's all areas like store credit, and yeah, the account portal is something that still requires probably some maturity from the Shopify end, but also needs some app developers to push the boundaries of it to get it to a level that merchants are actually happy with. Yeah, what are the key areas for you and the things you'd like to be sort of, if you had a week on a desert island, what would you be?
You know what? If it's like from the order editing perspective, I like here's my thoughts about it. I think the Shopify team is so cooking right now. I would not build anything AI at all. Because I'm just assuming that Shopify's team is going to steamroll everything and anything that's useful to the Shopify ecosystem as a broad whole. So I wouldn't do anything AI related. Just because, again, like I think that, like this, what was it called? Side gym app simulator. Was like you can simulate like checkouts in your store. You can send customers or products to ChatGPT. Like I wouldn't get involved in any of that. I'm just gonna like Shopify cook for a few quarters because they're like building the new foundation of like how commerce is maybe going to work in the next couple of years. But from my like internal side, everything that I'm focusing on right now is to say that how do my APIs and how does my app behave if you don't really have an access to a visual screen? How does editing orders works if you just have to communicate to ChatGPT about it? And this applies to like all apps, right? Like if
Mm,
you are a bundle app, how can you be a bundle app that doesn't require you to actually see the list of bundles that are available? You're just talking to a storefront through ChatGPT. How is it possible that I can just say, hey, I want to buy 3 of these products? And somehow it's going to return, we have the perfect bundle for you. It comes with 10% off. Right? Like if you're in the bundle space, if you're in the store credit space, how can you return that information back to the customer? And so most of my ideas in this space are how do I step away, assume that Shopify is going to cook everything that I'll need in a year, but my app just needs to return all that information back to whatever data provider is asking for it. So it just works.
yeah.
Assuming Shopify is going to build everything else. Because we see that on Sidekick, right? Sidekick is becoming a near miraculous app that can do anything, even access your app and ask it questions and build you an email campaign. Like that's Shopify building it, not individual developers.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and also the other apps and platforms that complement that, like Chat GPT and Gemini, obviously. Mate, they're surfacing the same data that Shopify is, and yeah, you can see now that Shopify and Google are in bed together. You're exactly right. Like just having good product data in Shopify, it's such a boring, such a boring thing to be doing in this time when It's there's so much cool, innovative stuff to do, but having good quality data that those systems are going to be able to read easily, that's the number one recommendation that we're giving people and seeing out there at the moment. And yeah, people want to do something a bit sexier with AI, but the foundations are just so important, aren't they?
It's always SEO, isn't it? Just goes back.
Yeah.
How good is your SEO?
It is, yeah. No, that's it. Well, SEO's now got a few extra acronyms as GEO and AEO or whatever other, I say
Right, right, right.
EIEIO, like old McDonald. But yeah, it's doing the simple things right is so important. I think what you touch on with APIs and stuff as well, like building stuff that uses the APIs in the right way, and yeah, the logic of making sure your tech stack is still clean as well, and you're not just piling on new features every day that you've built using AI that might be great individual features by themselves, but if they don't talk to each other well, and they're all one's written by Gemini, and they're not consistent with each other, you're setting yourself up for a world of pain in a few months' time.
100%. Especially like for like merchant, like people who sell products on Shopify, right? Like, how do you get discoverability open? How do you even get selected to be the product that's selected by Gemini? And it's like, it's might not even be like having a cool, flashy theme. It just might be like you ship products on time and you have good SEO. It goes back to the fundamentals being still the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to maybe just finish off. I'm going to wrap up in a minute, but I'd love to also hear a little, like there's, as you say, Shopify's cooking everything behind the scenes. Is there something that really still frustrates you, or even more importantly, frustrates your customers who would like you to build something that you just can't because Shopify is not capable of it yet? And I'm conscious this could open another can of worms and turn it into a 6-hour podcast, but what would you most like to see from Shopify to help make order editing better?
I think I could call out that like the Shopify notification templates. Well, I'll bring it back one question back, and that is Shopify has everything kind of built if only they had an API for it, right? Which comes back to that question of like everything's there. Like, they've in my eyes they've already won. Just give me the API for
Mm.
it. A good
Yeah,
a good like a good question is like you can edit the staff notifications that happen from an order, like the customer notification, or you can go to Klaviyo and send it yourself. But if you could easily just have that to be an API and a customer could drag and drop the order editing block into the email template, wow, so many hours saved to customers not knowing how to get back into their account to make a change. And we have to like do the coaching for them. But is that a feature that's not available? Or is Shopify just like waiting, and bam, there'll be an API release and 50 new apps will be created just because they expose this new API endpoint? And I think there's like a lot of that in this like space of just like you see a Shopify roll out a feature like you can do like inventory reports, but there's no API for it. Um, you can Shopify will tell you if an order is fraudulent, but there's no API to like resync and check again if the order is still fraudulent after making a few edits. But the API is there, and like just I don't know if you're holding Shopify stock, how exciting!
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's
One
it.
API release, and that's it. Whole new business can be opened by someone else that could go enterprise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, it's even like product taxonomy is another one when you're really off that list of things where like the Shopify's built this wonderful taxonomy structure for products now, but yeah, it's making it scalable can be really hard with some people. So it's that's it. I think we've got jobs for a little while yet, and yeah, there's still plenty in the roadmap for us to work on. So it's yeah, a very exciting place to be. And yeah, and look, I legitimately want to finish up by just saying, yeah, like I think it's people like you that make the ecosystem so exciting to still be a part of. And yeah, seeing what you and Hamish and the crew have achieved over the last few years has really, I think, set the standard for a new wave of people to build Shopify apps. Yeah, the way that you've built it behind the scenes and also marketed it together and told your story along the way. It's been a absolute testament to you both. And yeah, I'm sure there's lots of people learning a lot from the way you go about it. So thank you for thank you so much for joining us today, and just for everything you do out in the ecosystem. And I hope that people listening to this have gained as much out of this conversation as I have. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Kiril. I was gonna wrap up by also saying, how do we reach out to you? How do we find you? But I feel like everyone already knows where editing is, and you say you've got the domain orderediting.com. It's not too hard to find you, so I won't make you do that spiel to finish off.
Yeah,
But
not too hard to find me. Orderediting.com. I'm always chipping away at the marketing website. Funny story, the marketing website used to be on Webflow. I brought it all over with Claude just to be my own little remix site. So you'll always see it, see me chipping away at new design changes on that site. But if anyone ever has questions or wants like technical help or is like working on an app and they want like advice, I respond pretty quickly to LinkedIn messages. So anybody can always reach me out over on the LinkedIn world.
fantastic. And I know I do that with you and Hamish quite often. And yeah, love seeing everything you post on there. So once again, thank you very much. Thanks everyone who's tuned in to the Shopify app show. We'll be back again very soon with another, and hopefully another conversation as good as this one. So yeah, thanks Kiril, and yeah, we'll wrap it up there.
Woo! That was a good show. Best show in the Shopify universe.
Absolutely, yeah.